Well, welcome everybody. Glad that you guys are here. Um, we are excited to kick off. I think this is the third session of the day, and I'm really excited that we're going to be talking about Tier 2 and using data to inform intervention selection and decision making. Um, Big idea for this showcase, of course, on our end is identifying schools who are doing really good work, documenting a little bit of that experience so we can keep contributing to sort of the public good. And so today we have Leonard Lawrence Elementary School in Nebraska. Mariah and Andrea are going to be sharing their story about TFI 2.13. Hopefully give me a thumbs up if you can see their screen. Be good to go. Okay, I'm going to go on mute. Take it away, guys.
All right. Like as they said, I'm Mariah. So I am a school counselor during the day, but also the Tier 2-3 facilitator.
And I'm Andrea Pieper, and I'm the reading specialist, and I'm also the SST facilitator.
And we'll primarily be talking to you just about the data we collect and how we use that data to make decisions on whether or not students continue in our Tier 2 program. Sorry.
Okay, so a little bit about our school. Our school is kindergarten through sixth grade, and you can kind of see our demographics. We have 330 students. Our school is located close to Offutt Air Force Base, and our class size is about 20 students per class.
Other elementaries in our area are more heavily impacted by military, but still sharing that 15%. So the TFI 2.13 that we'll be talking about today establishes and uses decision rules and a written process for regular data. So we're looking at just monitoring so it benefits everybody and breaking that down by groups or individual students, adjusting those supports when necessary, whether they need a more intense intervention, a modification, or they're doing great work and they're ready to fade, just to make sure that students are still being supported with like the least restricted environment to help them make progress. Truly our Tier 2 system has been a work in progress. We were just talking, and it's been about 3 years that we've just really been attacking that Tier 2, collaborating with everybody. And so knowing that our teachers, our students, our community stakeholders are invested and aware of our Tier 2 process is really important to us. Just allows for us to share those resources a lot more easily without having to, start from square one and build that foundation over and over again. We feel really good about our Tier 2 system being very true, consistent, and then it's equitable for all students. So even our special education students receive some of these Tier 2 services too.
Okay, so our school implements a structured and consistent Tier 2-3 MTSS process. And we do this through a monthly leadership team meeting, and we kind of focus on data for students that are receiving these targeted supports. During these meetings, our team kind of reviews the data, and then we establish decision rules, and that helps us decide if we want to what our current interventions should be, and if we should intensify them, modify them, or fade them out. And decisions are made collaboratively and are intentionally individualized for each individual student. And then we allow the team to adjust support based on students' needs rather than applying uniform or systematic changes. And so you can kind of look on this slide to see kind of the different source of data that we look at to make our decisions. These are some of the examples of data measures that we utilize to decide if students need to receive their Tier 2 behavioral supports. SRSS stands for Student Risk Screener, and this is something that teachers fill out 3 times a year for each student. And this is looking at their internalizing and externalizing behavior concerns. And then we target students who are high risk in 1 or more categories, or if they're at risk in 2 or more categories.
And just the categories on here. So SRSS, like she mentioned, and then the office referrals, their attendance, tardies, how often are they visiting a counselor, meeting with a social worker, going to the health office, going to the nurse all the time, trying to be excused from class, that isolation as well. If we see that kind of out at recess, any in or out of school suspension. So those are all pretty easy measures we can get on a daily basis to help us make decisions.
So Check In, Check Out is a classroom-based behavioral intervention system designed to support student success throughout the school day. So students participating in Check In, Check Out use a daily behavior chart to track their progress towards specific goals. So each morning, the student has a specific mentor. It's someone in the school that they kind of helps build that positive relationship with. This interaction provides encouragement and kind of helps the students start off the day on a positive note. And then throughout the day, the classroom teacher checks in with the student about every 90 minutes, and then they award them points for the goals that they're working on. And then at the end of the day, the student checks out with their mentor, and this kind of provides another kind of positive interaction with the student, reviews the student's progress, and then the student can also may earn a reward for meeting their daily points for the day. And then all of that data for check in, check out is recorded, and we use that to monitor progress over time. And when necessary, the behavior chart and goals can be adjusted to better meet the individual needs of that student.
So based on the decision rules that you saw on the previous slide, our first go-to is to put them in our check-in, check-out tier 2 behavioral system. As you can see, the entry criteria is there. And then progress monitoring, at the end of every month, we kind of look at which students are making progress, which we want them to reach 80% of whatever their targeted goal is. And at that time, we decide, should we continue and just do another 4 weeks? Should we look at changing those goals for them? Do we need to increase parent home communication? Fading, self-monitoring is all based on what is their data speaking to, what is it saying. If they are unsuccessful or could just use another layer, we move into what's called SAIG. And so that's a social and academic instructional group. So the students that aren't responding to check in, check out, an option would be to be in this small group. Typically, it's about 4 to 6 students within the same grade level. And we repeat Boys Town skills. So just those 15 basic following directions, listening, staying on task, disagreeing appropriately. And we just really target that, make sure they're aware this is what's expected, this is what it looks like. And they're still getting progress monitoring with like a progress sheet. So just what Andrew was mentioning earlier, they're still checking in and checking out with a mentor. Their teacher is still giving them a score throughout the periods of the day. But we're just using this as an extra layer, making sure they're getting what they need when and if they need it.
So we also use a program called TAP, and that stands for Teachers and Parents as Partners. And this is a collaborative program that kind of brings the teachers, parents, and a facilitator together. And they kind of just come up with some goals that a student may need. So they have ongoing meetings, and the team between those 3 people, they work together to develop and implement a behavior plan tailored to their specific goals. So both the teacher and the parent set specific goals. So one for at home and then also for at school. Then they collect data, they monitor progress, and then they have follow-up meetings. And then in those meetings, they decide if they need to change that plan or continue. It basically is just a program designed to kind of strengthen that partnership between home and school while improving the students' behavior and overall learning outcomes.
Again, this is an option we'd go to after we attempted check in, check out. So check in, check out's our first go to. And then there's different layers. So the SAIG group, this TAP, and then we also have complex social, emotional, behavior groups. These ones would be led by like a mental health person in our building. So a school counselor, a school social worker, a school psychologist. We're looking at any student that is exhibiting high symptoms of internalizing or externalizing behaviors. Threat assessment potentially. These could be like we're working more on the anxiety piece of it, maybe behaviors intakes because there's a deployment in their family, a divorce, a death, so they need to grieve. And so it's just an option for them to really hone in on the why, the underneath layer of that iceberg. What are they actually experiencing and feeling that's leading to the behavior that we're seeing within the classroom and here at school. Still me, right? Okay. So we're not really going to go through this slide, but just some adjustments that could be made are listed here. So just like we said above, if there's any modification that needs to be done, these are just some of the options we process through at our monthly meetings for each student, not like collectively as a whole.
Okay, so this is an example of our check in, check out sheet that I was mentioning earlier. That is what the student has with them throughout the day. And this is what they take to their mentor in the morning, and then also when they check out with them at the end of the day. And then under expectations, you can see our generic one is be safe, be respectful, and be responsible. And those are kind of our school-wide goals. But sometimes we need to modify them depending on the student's goals. So they might have goals such as staying on task, disagreeing appropriately, or following directions. Those are just some things that we would need to modify depending on if they need to focus on a specific thing. Also, we can implement breaks within that check and check out, and that's also on the sheet as well. And so then at the end of the day, they tally up their points, and then the goal is 24 points at the top.
Yeah, reaching that 24 out of 30 would get them that 80% that we're looking for them to be successful in just the check in, check out program. So something we started this year that we think is really important, especially when strengthening your tier 2, is allowing home to understand why we're doing what we're doing, what the MTSS process is, all the different layers that encompass that. And so we send home to families like a letter on our school letterhead. It just kind of says this is what tier 1 level students receive. This is tier 2, and these are some things that we offer. Depending on your child's progress, we might be looking at tier 3, and we indicate what that might look like in the future. We do ongoing communication. So as we're looking at any progress monitoring, we're keeping families informed. Your child's doing great work. We're going to start fading them out. We think they need a little more time. We're going to continue with the current intervention. Any modifications, just so that they're aware, whether it's changing a facilitator, increasing the amount that they're checking in with somebody, adding those breaks in, just so we're keeping that open line communication. And we found that this year that's been really helpful, having those conversations, phone call in person at parent-teacher conferences, or simply sending those letters home for more documentation. And then this is something that we all have to fill out and give to our district. So check in, check out. As you can see, the number of students participating kind of fluctuates each month. And then depending on their response, that will allow us again to determine whether we continue, modify, or fade. And then as the year goes on, more students who are successful in just check in, check out, we kind of encourage them to learn some new skills and tackle some other skills that will help them in their future, so they get on that modified check in, check out. So you can notice those numbers shift. But ultimately, our goal is that 80% of students are responding. The current self-assessment we gave ourselves in the TFI 2.13 is a 4. And I think the biggest thing we're working on right now is if Andrea and I were to step away, from being in this role, would someone be able to take it over? So we're working on like a written system that would be able to allow someone to follow and implement it if one of us were to not be part of the team anymore.
So here are just some suggestions for getting started. Definitely, if you don't already have a team, definitely get a team together of staff members and have different roles and responsibilities. And then you need to make sure that you're meeting regularly, and then use that time that you're together to look over data and make those decisions. Also, a suggestion would be, you know, something that we're still working on is creating more of like that written process with documentation, and then make sure that communication with, you know, your staff and your parents and students is very clear, and, you know, you're doing that regularly. Anyone have any questions?